without denying the numerous traumatic exceptions, long and costly wars abroad, terrorist attacks, urban riots, and pandemics at home, Americans with two large oceans buffering us have not been acquainted with all-out war on our own soil in more than a century and a half. Meanwhile, substantial advances in agriculture, healthcare, education, economic development, and on have accustomed us to the expectation of long and largely safe, healthy, and happy lives full of choices and material abundance inconceivable to generations before us. All of this is wonderful, but all of this also is an aberration in the long story of humanity. Would it be prudent to ask ourselves how we would react if that changed? Are there steps we could take in advance to develop greater resilience in the face of unexpected trauma or tragedy? And on a much lighter note, what should we make of Adrian's top 10 list? Stay tuned as we discuss all that and more right now on the Retirement Lifestyle Show.
Retirement Lifestyle Show is back with another episode today. It's going to be a really solid episode, and I'm very excited. This should be our 100th episode posted, so I'm really looking forward to this. I'm really hyped, guys. I'm locked in, and I'm ready to go. We, as always, have another exciting topic today, expecting the unexpected and planning for the unplanned. And we're going to get into some deep topics today, and it's going to be an awesome episode. And at the end, listeners, it's going to be really awesome. I'm going to share my top 10 list. I'm going to keep it a little bit of a mystery so you listen to the podcast and hear what we have to say at the end. It's going to be really good. It's a new segment that I like to continue on using so you all get to know us a little bit better. So I'm really looking forward to this episode today. Roshan, Erik, my co-host, I'm glad you're here. I hope you guys are locked in too and ready for another great episode today.
Ready to go. I got the unexpected last night when the Washington football team hit that field goal after an unexpected penalty on the Giants. I feel great. This may be the only win we have this year. I'm going to enjoy it. I think we'll do better than one.
It was awesome. It was a really fun game to watch too. And it was funny when I was driving home. I was listening to the radio station. Erik, you're probably not familiar with it, but Roshan, Hot 99.5, does that sound familiar?
Yes, yeah.
And they're interviewing people at the tailgate, and it was a pretty one-sided interview where they interviewed a Washington fan, and they asked, "Oh, what kind of food do you have at the game?" And the person said, "I have hot dogs and egg rolls," which was one of the weirdest combinations I've heard. Yeah. And then they go to a Giants fan and like, okay, so what do you think about the game today? And of course the Giants fans are like, oh, we're going to beat you guys. It's going to be a one-sided game. We always have your number and stuff. And I just thought it was a pretty a lopsided interview, but it was pretty fun and entertaining, just like the game. And I'm just happy that football is back.
Yeah, I can't believe Danny Dimes was 4-0 against us. That shows how bad we were because he's a terrible quarterback for the Giants.
Yeah, it's exciting. Erik, are you happy that the NFL's back?
Not at all. I'm not watching. I'm not paying attention. I have no idea what's going on. So this is so interesting to hear how I didn't even know really the season had started. Honestly, that's how out of it I am right now.
Were you big into watching the Olympics? Did you watch any of the Olympics this year?
Almost no Olympics. No. How about you?
Same here.
I watched a lot of the basketball games, but you're a big baseball guy. How's get us updated on the baseball, and then we'll jump into the topics.
I've kind of abandoned baseball. I have no time, and the Padres have just completely collapsed since the trade deadline. They're 15 wins and 25 losses. It's just been miserable being a Padres fan the second half. So I'm not even. I feel like such a Debbie Downer here. I am just not in sports at all. I think maybe it's partly mourning the Padres.
You're locked into the podcast. No time for anything else.
then I'll throw you an easy pitch here, Erik. Any good hiking adventures? Any when's like the last time you went hiking or went on a trail or something? Was that a good experience?
Oh well, I don't have a dramatic hiking experience, but I will tell you that I did get onto Google Earth and map every one of the route or points along the route that we're going to be walking in the first week of October on Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore. So we'll be in the backcountry for 6 days. And have you ever used Google Earth? You ever seen how that thing, you can zoom in and do 3D and all that jazz?
I have, yes, a little bit.
Yeah.
Not a trail like that though. Probably only spent like 10 or 15 minutes on it.
Yeah, this is really cool. So you can make a little project and put things in sequence, and it'll zoom from one to the next. So, but anyway, hey, thanks for asking. So let's get into our topic today. And listeners, I want to just talk about why we think this is important. Again, planning for the unplanned, expecting the unexpected. When I think most of us have a conception, and I think this is certainly reinforced in the work that Roshan, Adrian, and I do as financial planners, and particularly when we're doing long-range planning for our clients as opposed to trying to solve a particular short-term question about, should I use a 529 or how should I save for kids' college education or such. We're trying to make these long-term projections. One of the flaws in our thinking, and I don't mean this just as planners, I really do mean this as people, as we think about retirement, I think we sort of think of it as in these idyllic terms, sort of steady state. It's essentially just 1 year is just an extension of the next, with the possibility of course we're going to get older, and our families will their stories will unfold. But in terms of any sort of disruptions to that, I think we think of it as very smooth and very stable. Guys, would you agree with that?
The transition into retirement as being smooth or stable?
No,
life
I mean, when you've made that transition, or however you're thinking about your life, you're normally thinking about it as an extension of kind of what your life is like right now, with sort of mild unfolding, but nothing necessarily that disruptive to your life.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, Eric. Well, sometimes I also see it like as a routine, or you're maybe in the stage of life where you're kind of taking everything day by day. Maybe you're really focusing your career and you're working on a project, you're getting that done. Or let's just say you really like a hobby, or you're big into sports, and you go to your job, and after that you join like the club, and like your club sport or whatever, and you're kind of taking everything like day by day, and you're not really expecting anything major to come in and disrupt it all of a sudden, or any big transition or something to really disrupt it, so to speak.
Yeah.
Eric, I think it's the most fun when I disagree with you, so I get to disagree with you on this one.
Good.
And,
Go ahead.
And what I mean by that is I think one of the benefits of the career we're in is I get to see my client's experience. And I see retirement as incredibly disruptive to their life, right? In the sense that they're planning for it, and you can plan as much as you want, but you don't exactly know what it is until you experience it. So I feel like and that's where we've talked about this before. There's that class I attended that I'm a fan of called Paths at OSHA Asheville, where they help discuss retirement transition. I've gone there, and they had like 40 or they had more than that, probably had 100 people attend that class that were all trying to prepare themselves for that transition because it's so disruptive. And then beyond not knowing what it's like till you try it, I frequently will see people who expect to follow path A into retirement, and they retire and realize they don't really like path A, so they've got to transition or pivot to something else.
Okay, I think we're talking about two different things. Okay. So on the one hand, I definitely agree with what you just said, that retirement itself is that is an abrupt change from the phase before it. But what I'm saying more is just in terms of a life outlook, that I think our expectations about the future are relatively tame, maybe relatively peaceful expectations about the future, and that the change, with the exception of leaving a job and going to the next, or the other familiar changes, like maybe someone gets married, or and one day one of us in a marriage will pass away, or whatever. We understand that. But in terms of anything else outside those sort of the normal ebb and flow of the stylized normal life, if you will, isn't, I think, really part of our conception. I want to give some examples. Perfect. And this is now, we could use reference points going as far back as we wanted to go. But I mean, just at least for I would think most Americans can understand, even if they didn't experience some of these reference points. So imagine that you're in early 20th century, and it's 1914, and you start hearing the winds of war in Europe, and before you know it, in 2017, many American young men are being shipped off to this war. And then in 2018, I believe it is, you have the epidemic worldwide of the Spanish flu, and many young people that really would hit young people really, really hard. And so at some level, you had just this kind of massive disruption in an entire society with many people now gone all of a sudden. And we could walk that through further. Then the Great Depression, who would have expected that? And then the Second World War, and hundreds of thousands of lives lost here, but from the U.S. But at least when you talk about that in comparison to Europe, you had tens of millions of people whose lives were permanently changed by that. I would think there were somewhere around, if I'm not mistaken, from just casualties of war, both civilian and military. If in Russia, I believe it was, or in the Soviet Union per se, at that time, I believe it was 20 million. And so, and we can just kind of play that story forward.
Mm-hmm.
I think in the United States, we've been largely, but not perfectly, isolated from that historically by the fact of our geography and two oceans, massive oceans on either side.
Yeah, and
but
Erik, I just want to make a quick point too with some of the stuff you're bringing up. It's really interesting. Is also these events too can sometimes be out of your control.
Where all of those
completely,
are.
Yeah, all of these are completely out of your control. And again, like as planners, we could probably have this really great plan for you, or you could always be prepared, or you can always be ready. You could have a lot of stuff going for you, a lot of positive stuff's going for you, and you're kind of really, let's just say, built up this suit of armor around you where like nothing can really disrupt you, so to speak. But then there's these events or these like historical events that happen that are really out of your control that could really affect all this. I think is going to be a really important concept to really talk about in this episode, where just sometimes things are out of your control, where you have all this stuff going for you. You're kind of taking everything day by day right now, and you have these like uncontrollable events that really disrupt that. You better be resilient, you better be emotionally ready, just so you can kind of respond to this type of adversity to really get back to like stable ground, so to speak.
Yeah, Roshan?
I completely agree. I'll tell you where you're leading me to is the question of what do you do about it? Like everything you've described is completely unpredictable.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and I think I don't know that you can do anything to prevent it. What I think you can do is to ask yourself, how would I respond to it? I'm thinking about, in the Second World War, I cited 20 million people in the Soviet Union, but there was also 6 million Jews and Poles exterminated by the Nazi regime, and you had and Catholics as well. I think were to a certain extent part, but mostly we're focusing this on the pogrom against the Jews, and then think about Europe and think about all of Western Europe. Think about Britain and all those places, just how completely destroyed that it was. And honestly, twice in about from 1917 at the beginning of the First World War to the 1944 there, or 45, I guess, in the Second World War. You're talking about a span of 28 years. You had these two massive disruptions in that life. I think what it serves to illustrate for me, and here we had, I'm not in any way comparing these, though they were horrific. I'm not comparing these events to what occurred there, but you had 9/11, and you had other things here in the United States, and now worldwide, a pandemic. So I think if you say, my life, as I think forward about it, one thing I think that the recognition of traumatic things that can happen outside your control perhaps ought to do, I think for step one, at least for me, one step is to savor and have immense gratitude for what we have for the most part right now. I mean, when we have an extended period of happiness and peace and prosperity like this country has enjoyed, I think that's something where instead of just sort of treating it as that's normative, that's not normative.
Yeah.
And we're in the wealthiest, healthiest period in human history. This is an unbelievable blessing from that standpoint.
Yeah, you have to cherish it and don't take it for granted, and really, really count your blessings. Basically, I think is really important. And like you said, Eric, too, and also Roshan, I sent you that article too. During like times that are tough or disruptions or like let's just say bad things that happen. And it's always hard and it's always kind of cliche to say, always look on the bright side or just try and be positive. But that could really go a long way sometimes. Just really, if things are going good, and then something like that happens or disruptions happen, just try and just be as positive as you can, just to see whatever you can really do to make a bad situation even a little bit better, whether it's a small thing, to really help you manage the situation with that, especially when it comes to your emotions, your feelings, the people around you, I think is a really important way to kind of start it off.
Well, and I mentioned this before. Years ago, I taught that class, the happiness hour at the senior center, and the whole intent was to help retirees be happier. Just because I'd read that there were overwhelmingly a lot of them were. I talk to people all day whose goal is to retire, and then I thought, well, now you're getting to retirement, you get your goal, and you're not happy. But one of the things that came up that lines up is there's this thing called the three gratitudes, the three things you're grateful for, that it was recommended you write them down every day. So on a daily basis, you write them down at night, and that. I wish I could remember more details on the study, but they said it was more effective than most depression medications. And what happens is throughout your day, you're looking for the gratitudes that you're going to write down at night. So you're not only just reliving them when you write them down, but you spend your day searching for them, which makes you more appreciative of what you have and happier in general.
I'm gonna jump in and say three things I'm grateful for today, just in this moment. I'll just off the top of my head. I'm grateful to be healthy. I'm grateful to be recording another episode with the RLS boys. That's good. And I'm also grateful for my fiance watching the puppy today, so I can record in the apartment without no disturbances.
That's great.
Wow, that makes me feel better, Roshan, at work. Thank you.
There you go. Although you started out this podcast seeming like you were in a great mood as well.
A new setup. This is my 10th new podcast setup. I mean, I'm not sure. I'm just throwing out the number, but it's been a lot. And I'm liking this one. I get to sit on the couch. And Roshan and Eric want me to take a picture of my podcast setup because it's a little over the top. But
well, his computer's on a suitcase and the microphone's on 10 books, right? Roughly.
Yeah. Well, so let me talk about a couple other things I think are useful in terms of just sort of more preventive as opposed to reactive. One we've talked about now here is gratitude. I think another is, I think it's useful to gain exposure by involving yourself in the lives of people who have suffered, because I think suffering is a great teacher, and people who have suffered, that now not at maybe sometimes for macro exogenous events like a war, but maybe for more sort of micro experiences like the death of a family member or something of that kind, and who have been through grief or trauma of that kind, have much to teach. And so I think to be able to learn from those people and is a big positive step. I think it's furthermore, it's not only just learning through conversation, but learning through engagement. I think some of the people that I have just immense admiration for, and I'm going to confess sort of a deficiency in my own heart, I guess, which is, there's some people that I really do care about, and I feel very tender-hearted toward, and for reasons I don't fully understand, that might be prisoners. But I've been involved in a homeless ministry, and I just felt like I just couldn't engage as fully as some of the people who were regular just permanent volunteers in these, and to see these permanent volunteers engaging with these people whose stories, lots of stories. Some of them are homeless for reasons completely beyond their own control, brain injuries or other sorts of things that have left them really incapable of functioning in normal society. Other people have just made a series of really terrible choices that have led down a path, and here they are. But wow, to see, to engage in that with those people and that kind of predicament and that suffering, I think teaches a lot and changes your outlook on who you are and what you have in your own life. So it was just a preventive step again, not necessarily the reactive one.
Yeah, and you mentioned how you did it through ministry. That's where I was thinking as soon as you described it. Well, the first thing that came to mind for me was reading books or listening to audio books in terms of learning from that experience. But you answered my question of how else can you get exposure to it?
Yeah. And it just gives great perspective. I think that's really big. And that's something that, sometimes you really have to hone on, and given a situation or just understanding somebody's story to really, you never want to compare, from like person to person, but just, sharing your experiences, sharing stories, just like reading up on what you can to really just get some perspective or maybe like a new outlook to kind of, just kind of reevaluate things in your life or your routine or whatever it may be, can be really, really beneficial and really important, given if something like we said, like an uncontrollable situation happens, you might be a little bit more prepared for it at that time by having a new perspective, or, you heard somebody's story that kind of sounds familiar where they maybe got through a situation like that, can really go a long way.
Mm-hmm. So I guess I would say from a planning standpoint, and I'm not talking about necessarily the technical aspects of planning, and although I think it certainly could extend into those sorts of things. It could extend into incorporating a what if about a major disruption to your ability to earn a living, or whether that's micro to you and a disability, or whether that's macro because the economy falls apart and when you have another depression of some kind. But incorporating into that planning some of those what ifs. But I also do think that just aside from the technical part, if you can contemplate, well, how would I react in such and such an event in the future? How would I go about doing that and not feel as though life was over? My entire capacity for happiness and joy in life was upended. How would I go about finding happiness and joy in the midst of something that's befallen me or us that is outside our control? And I think reflecting on that and identifying more clearly perhaps the sources of your real joy in life is a starting point.
I guess this to me sounds like our most depressing episode right now. Why are you making me reflect on this? So let me ask you that question, right? Tell me. I do have some ideas and thoughts, but why? If I'm someone who likes to not deal with things like this in terms of in general, that's my attitude. Why should I deal with this? Why are you depressing me right now?
Well, I'm sorry I'm depressing you, and I'm sorry if I'm depressing any listeners.
I'm expecting something profound from you now, Erik, as to why.
Well, I do think that if you've never given any consideration to that, and then suddenly something unexpected does happen, you have fewer resources immediately available to help you navigate through that and have, as to use a word that you used earlier, Adrian, to have resilience in the face of that. You've had no sort of psychological or emotional contemplation of that, and hence you have very little preparation for that, and hence you're more vulnerable. So I think if you can give some consideration to, well, how would I respond? How would I proceed in life? How would I find the richness in life? And how to identify what's rich in life to begin with? Maybe it's not the accoutrements of comfort and health and prosperity that have assumed such a large, such a large role in my definition of happiness, and instead thinking about happiness in other terms.
Well, there's your answer, Roshan, and that made me feel really great. This went from the most depressing episode to one of the wisest episodes.
That's what I was looking for.
I really like that, Erik. I really like that. That was really good. And just to help Roshan get out of his little state, I'll tell a little lighthearted story to kind of like bring it into this topic.
Well, Erik, I thought you were setting us up. So don't get. I thought you were giving us a depressing setup to lift us up. So I was trying to play my role.
Well, I have something else to lift us up, but I'll wait to hear this lighthearted story.
Yes.
That lifted me up, Erik, and your tactic, Roshan, of like the 3 things that you're grateful for. That brought me up. So I'm feeling pretty good on this Friday. So that's pretty solid. So I'll just dive into my story. This is a story that I just kind of prepared, or an event that happened when I was thinking about this like topic. Expecting the unexpected. It's a little lighthearted story, just to kind of give you a little theme. So I was going to New York with my fiance. We're just going to spend a weekend in New York. So I was really looking forward to it. I was really excited. I had the whole itinerary ready to go, and we were really excited to go. So we're driving there. Everything's been pretty solid for the most part. And I say we're probably around like 2 hours away from New York. And I think we did this in like December, so it was pretty cold out. And then my car, which is a little old, the heat stopped working. So that was a big bummer, especially in December time. And we were driving for 30 minutes without any heat. And then it started getting really, really cold. And I'm the type of person, as cheesy it may sound, I always like to try and turn a bad situation into a good one. I try to be as positive as possible. Because like I said, going to New York, I had like this whole itinerary ready to go. I had all these plans, and it's starting off on the bad foot. And just kind of like looking back in like an alternate reality, I could have let that kind of really damper the mood of the whole trip, so to speak. I could have been like, oh man, this is so bad. This is whack. I'm upset. You know what I mean? And just, had a really negative outlook to it, but that wasn't the case. So like we pulled over at like a rest stop area, classic millennial I am. I go on my phone, how to get the heat working bad in the car, what could be the wrong. I was giving the car the full works, like pulling coolant in the car, just figuring out what I could do, just doing everything I could possibly do. And then it actually worked, and it was awesome. And it was just kind of just the theme of this episode, expect the unexpected, preparing for the unplanned, whatever you want to call it, just being ready for when a bad situation gets thrown your way, just responding to it the best way you possibly can. And then I have one of the greatest memories in New York. That was one of my favorite trips ever, and it started off on the wrong foot. So just me being able to kind of respond to adversity, so to speak, and just turning a bad situation into a good one was just really good, and created one of my favorite weekends I could imagine in New York. It was so great, and it was so memorable, and all because I just decided to not let a bad situation really get at me, and just try and be proactive, see what I can do, and be positive. Went a really long way. I think that ties in really well with the theme of this episode.
Yeah, that's great. What was the greatest memory? And don't tell me it was pulling over to get the heat working.
I mean, there was so many memories. That's where we saw the Rockefeller tree. Mm-hmm. That was awesome. We went to Central Park. That was a great time. I got a picture with the Wall Street Bull. Have you guys ever been there? Took a picture with it?
Yeah, I don't know that I've taken a picture, but I've been there. Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Erik, I'm surprised you never
I've been there, but I never got the photo.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I didn't get the T-shirt, so I
good.
missed out.
And that was in the financial district. And then after I got a picture with the bull, we went to this really nice Italian restaurant. That was pretty funny too. It was a really great restaurant, super nice. And then when we were leaving, I went to stop by the bathroom, but you had to take this elevator up to like the 30th floor or something in the building. It was like super weird. And I forgot what number it was. And I clicked like 35 or something. And the elevator opens up and I walk out, and it's like this really nice lounge area. And I interrupted this like really bougie book meeting or something. Everyone's just like staring at me. I'm just like, oh, this this is definitely not the right floor. And I just went back down. But that was awesome. We went to like all like the big stores there, like the Macy's stores. We went to like this really big Target clothing stores, like candle stores. We saw this really cool, it was like this like tricked out car, and the person was dressed up as like the Grinch, and it was like really cool. It was just a really great memory. But again, tying to the theme of the episode, like it started off on a really bad foot with like my the heat not working in my car, but I just was trying to stay positive, fix the situation, and that really just helped me create a really great memory. So that's it's really awesome.
Good.
So now digging deeper into this, though, our theme being preparing for the unexpected. I mean, it's not like you had an extra heater with you. You know what I mean? You pulled over and figured it out. So let's talk a little bit more about that.
I guess this will be like the real quick thing, and we'll move on to the next topic. It's just like I had so much stuff planned out like beforehand. So there was always part of me in the back of my mind, you know, maybe one thing might fall through, whether it's our reservation or the place we're staying at is not great, or we wanted to do this or couldn't do it. So I knew it was a long week in New York. So there's probably going to be an instance where something might not go as planned. So being as prepared as possible, so if something does come up, I can just, so to speak, keep the party going.
Yeah, which is great. Erik, I know you've got other items on your list.
Well, I do, but you know what? I'm also mindful of the time, so let's shift gears and go to the subject, the segment of meet the co-hosts. And I think, Adrian, we're featuring you this week, right? So
I do. I want to jump into that
10.
episode, but before we move on to that, Roshan, is there anything else you want to talk about this topic, or any like stories from like a client situation, or anything that you want to share before we move on?
Yeah,
I mean, I'm really liking this episode so far. So this is really cool.
No, I actually have a few things that have come up, or that where I've seen people react to this, but I think as far as preparing in advance, some of the stuff I think you've got to manage your outlook when you get there, and maybe you prepare for that. I compare that in our line of work to like the behavioral finance conversations, but I don't know, aside from thinking about how you're going to react, you just have to in that moment then react. But let's shift over, as Erik said, Adrian, to
there'll be one more thing, because there's only one more topic I had on this, and then we can move on to you guys are really excited for my segment. I'm really flattered right now. It's a good one. You guys just want to know what my top 10 list is. So
well, I am interested in that. Yeah. So what have you had to say about this topic, Adrian?
Well, the only thing I want to, the last piece on the expecting the unexpected and planning for the unplanned would, are you guys familiar with Murphy's Law? Have you ever heard of that? That's a really good one for this episode.
Yes.
That's like a classic one that I learned, like my finance professors told me in school is like a really like concept that they thought was interesting. Are you guys familiar with it? Erik, you know what it is? Do you want to help our listeners with that?
What can go wrong will go wrong.
Yeah, that's a good one. What do you think about that quote, Roshan? Is that an accurate quote? What's your kind of hot take on it? Do you want to roast it? You always like taking the opposite sides of stuff.
I mean, the moment I think that is probably the low of the time I need to be in the middle, when I'm in the middle of the unexpected. I need to get myself out of it, right? So I've heard of it. I know about it. I have felt that at moments, but I try not to very often adhere to it. I try to think of it like especially if I'm in the middle of something that's not great, I try to think what will go wrong has already gone wrong, and now it's my time to fix it. So that's my way to try to control my mindset when I feel like I'm in one of those moments.
Yeah, I like that take. And it's funny, Erik, when I told Roshan the topic that we were talking about, what was the first thing that came to your mind, Roshan?
I have no idea what you guys are talking about. I missed for the listeners, I was not there at the production meeting where we came up with the topic. I was at my cousin's wedding, so he doesn't listen, but if he does, congratulations, Anil and Karishma. But I'll tell him I gave him a shout out. So awesome. I missed the production meeting. I got the email, and I said to Adrian, I have no idea what this means. So
well, the first thing you said, you thought the topic was going to be about insurance.
I did. I literally said to him, "Are we talking about insurance in this preparing for the unexpected episode?" But
oh, that's right. This would make a good insurance commercial, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would. But I do like what we've got. I do like what we've come up with.
Well, so Adrian, did you finish your point? Because I have one more point. Then, if we're not going to
Perfect.
your top 10 list, I've got one more thing.
Yeah,
Are you done with your thing?
Yeah, I'm gled you came up with another one. Nice, Eric.
Okay.
I'm
Well,
sure listeners are excited to hear it.
So I'm trying to remember who authored this or who made this observation initially, but it was about in terms of reacting to the adverse. I mean, now we're talking about dramatically adverse. If I understood correctly, this when you look at the those in Europe who were most inclined to resist the Nazis and the most inclined to take the risks of harboring those that the Nazis were seeking, primarily Jews, then the personality attributes of those people who were most prone to take that risk were people who were, prior to the onset of all of this, considered somewhat cantankerous, somewhat odd fellows, somewhat not marching to the same drummer as everyone, and nonconformists, kind of cranks in some ways. So I just want to say, first of all, to all of those cranks and nonconformists who were willing to take a risk in that phase to try to save the lives of people, I thank God for you. Mm-hmm. And in terms of our own time, I want to say, to a certain extent, we shouldn't be so afraid of people who think a little differently about some things. It seems to me today the pressure for conformity of thought, at least, is more intense than it's ever been in my lifetime. Mm-hmm. And so I just want to say, 3 cheers for all of you who are not yet prepared to succumb to those kind of intense pressures for conformity. We need you, and who knows, you may be the one that saves a lot of lives sometime.
Yeah, I love that point, Eric. I tell you where I thought you were going, and I have a reference to add. So, yeah, different direction completely, but there was a book called Grit by Angela Duckworth, and they reference it in one of my Science of Happiness class books, but they talk about people who have the most grit, who can essentially persevere. And interestingly, when you started your story, I thought you were going to talk about the people who had been through adverse situations before, but then the people who are willing to march to the beat of their own drummer have had to deal with adverse situations, because they're people who will almost not allow them or challenge them, whatever, make fun of them, whatever term you want to use for doing that. So I think I bet they would fall high on what Duckworth created as a grit scale as well. But it's a pretty good book, pretty good read that I'd recommend to our readers that are interested in the topic. And Adrian, let's introduce Adrian's segment. I wish we had music and theme song to put in here.
Oh,
but
maybe we should add one in.
We should add
sicko mode.
It would have, yeah. I was going to say it would have to be something from a Marvel movie, but yes, Travis Scott works too.
That's funny. Wow, you're getting pretty close to my top 10 list, Roshan.
Oh, let's go.
Shows how smart you are.
No, it needs to be gaming music.
Oh, there we go.
Maybe. You guys are helping me come up with more meet the co-host ideas for my segment. So thank you. Just keep adding them, and I'll definitely use them for future episodes.
Yeah, next time we'll do guess about the co-host and see if we can get the answers right. Kind of like Family Feud version.
Oh yeah, we'll maybe tell like 3 stories or something, and then you have to figure out what story goes with which co-host or something.
Yeah,
These are all good ideas.
Well, let's hear it. What are your 10 things?
Well, I'll just jump us into kind of the theme or how I came up with this. The segment's going to call Meet the Co-Host. It's subject to change until I find a catchier title for this segment. But for right now, listeners, this is just a way for you to kind of get to know us a little bit better. We share either a story or something that we like or enjoy or a memory or whatever it may be, so you can kind of really get to know us. I think this will be something that would be really cool to add. Given that this is our 100th episode, sometimes we're very technical or focus on some really deep topics sometimes. So it's good to kind of just, sit back, maybe open up a Friday beer. Here's one of, not a real beer, but this is one of my puppy's favorite little toys right here. And I'll show you his second favorite toy. You guys recognize what this is?
Yeah, it's money.
Yep, I play
Rats.
fetch with a phone.
Yeah.
But just so the listeners get to know us just a little bit more, and I think it'll be a really fun topic just to discuss. So,
Okay, Adrian, what are the top 10? Come on, you've got us on the edge of our seats. What are we waiting for?
Well,
You've
category.
Eric that's rude Eric right there for everyone.
That's Midwest Rude, Eric.
We've never seen the slide. Over 100 episodes, and it's the first time Eric's yelled at me. I'm triggered. I'm a millennial. I'm offended. I'm going to cancel you, Eric. So here we go. Just so the listeners get to know about me or what I like, I'm going to do my top 10 movies.
Oh yes, let's go. Number 10 is
okay, great.
This is in no particular order, and this is subject to change too. This might be my definitive top 10 list, but this is one I made just movies that I enjoy. One day, maybe when I'm older, I'll have the legit top 10 in order, but this is in no particular order, but top 10 movies I like. And I'm curious to see how many of these you guys actually watch. So try and keep count to see how many you guys are actually watch. So let me know when you guys are ready, Eric, or are you just going to scream, Adrian, go already, go.
I already said it. I think I'm going to
Eric's
just
about
have to
leave.
train myself in patience.
Yeah.
So we'll help our YouTube audience. We'll just give me a thumbs up if you've seen the movie and a thumbs down if you haven't seen the movie. So it'll be a little bit easier. All right, the first one on my list, in no particular order. The first one is The Dark Knight.
Winner. I think that should be. I don't know the rest of your list, but I think that should be number one. Keep going.
That's a good one.
Oh, I thought it was if you'd seen it or not. I have no idea. Okay, all right.
Yeah, just if
I
you've
have not seen it.
If you've seen it, thumbs up. If you haven't seen it, thumbs down. The next one on my list, Dunkirk. Thumbs down. Eric, is that thumbs down or thumbs up for you?
He didn't know you named it.
I like that. Dunkirk's one of my favorite war movies. I'd say it's better than Saving Private Ryan. I probably triggered somebody pretty hard that listens to this podcast by saying that. But Dunkirk's on my top 10 list. The next one is Infinity War, the Marvel movie. I'm sure Roshan's not surprised he seen that.
No, but I haven't seen that whole series.
So that's good. The next one, it's I think one of the funniest movies I've ever watched, Dazed and Confused. This is one of the funniest movies I've ever watched. Oh, Roshan, you've seen it. That's awesome.
Yep.
The next one on my list, this is an all-time classic, highly reviewed, one of the top movies as far as critics, Schindler's List with Liam Neeson. That one's really good. Next one, animated. I'm going the animated space, Zootopia. Roshan, I'm sure your kids probably love this movie.
I've seen that a bunch of times. I've seen that more than any other movie you've named so far.
No kidding. Is it because of your kids, or you just like Zootopia and you just watch it when you get off of work?
No, it was my kids' favorite movies for a little while, and they were playing that Shakira song, Try Everything, nonstop. So, yes.
That's good. There's some wholesome content for our listeners today. Yeah. So I got 4 more on my list. The next one is Star Wars Revenge of the Sith. That one's a classic. That was one of my favorite ones growing up.
That one.
I love the fight scene at the end. That was classic. The next one is Spider-Man 2, the Tobey Maguire one where he fights Doc Ock. That's a really good one. A lot of action.
I've seen that one.
I think I've seen that.
Nice. Okay, I got 2 more on my list. The next one is Pursuit of Happiness with Will Smith. That one's a really good one.
I love that movie. Read that book too.
Oh, no kidding. There's a book.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I got to check that one out. That's really good.
He's in finance. You got to pick that one up.
Yeah, I definitely have to check that one up. Really great story. And then the last one on my list, I definitely had to have a sports one on here, but I guess if this one's considered sports, it might be hit or miss, but Space Jam, the first one.
Oh, I've seen that. Yeah, the first one. Eric, you're from Chicago. Jordan's in that movie.
We got to catch Eric up on all my movies. But listeners, that's my top 10 movie list, and those are kind of the movies that if they're playing on TV, or if I just want to pull something up, that's just movies I like to enjoy. So you get the know a little bit about what I like. So, and I'll just continue this segment so you get to learn about me a little bit more, learn about the co-host, know what we like, and see what we enjoy. So I really enjoyed you guys letting me share that. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Excellent.
Good.
I need to re-listen to the episode because I didn't write down the ones I hadn't watched. I think I'd only seen about half of them.
Awesome. Yep. Very good. Eric, you want to comment on my top 10 list, or are you ready to wrap it up? Was it
I'm
worth
ready
the
to
wait?
wrap it up.
Was it worth the wait? That's the
Absolutely,
question,
it was
Eric.
worth the wait. Yes, it was. I feel like this cathartic release finally that we got to hear the list. Yes, amazing.
If Eric's mic wasn't attached to something, he would drop it and walk out right now.
Midwesterners don't do that. That's not our MO.
Gentlemen, another great episode. I actually liked the topic that I was clueless about when I first heard the title. So great job, great new segment, Adrian. I like that as well. We will be back. All of our listeners, first and foremost, thank you for joining us for another episode of the Retirement Lifestyle Show. We'll be back next week. Please tell your friends, family, like, subscribe, send links. Go to our website, retirementlifestyleshow.com, and we'll be back to you next week with another great episode and another segment about the hosts.